I'm going to start by setting the scene. Different world, same challenges, new expectations. Let's start with the world we're in today. I think it's fair to say that during this period of uncertainty, and I'm going to refrain from using unprecedented, it seems to have been overused, but certainly a surreal period of uncertainty. A lot has changed, a lot will probably remain changed, but also, as well as many things being different, a lot is likely to stay the same. The fundamental challenges that businesses are facing and continue to face in order to survive and thrive hasn't changed. There's still this need to stand out, there's still a need to connect with customers, there's still a need to build loyalty and trust. And this is all happening in a world where it's becoming increasingly difficult to do so. We're finding that we're hit with more and more messages, more and more noise, there's constant connectivity, and as a result, it's actually having an impact on our attention spans, which now, I think the latest research revealed, are down at just 8 seconds. The past few months have really been a catalyst for understanding why some brands consistently outperform others. And we've seen the corporate face of business literally replaced by a human one. I think it was very early on into lockdown. I can remember sitting on a call with an individual who I'd only ever seen in a boardroom setting, suited and booted, suddenly sat at a table. I think he had his dog on his lap. He was sitting in a Rafa tracksuit. The doorbell went. He had to jump up and answer an Amazon delivery. It's been an extraordinary leveler, and we've seen this corporate face replaced by a human one, and we've seen it at that level, but we've seen it in businesses too, with many businesses pivoting their entire operations to help during the crisis. I'm sure you can think of loads of examples, but I think here are a good few. Dyson pledging to make ventilators, Burberry changing their trench coat factory into an operation to produce gowns and masks for the NHS, Deliveroo focusing on NHS workers specifically, providing 500,000 free meals. And the supermarkets doing the same thing, Lidl putting together fruit and veg bags and delivering those direct to the hospitals specifically for NHS staff. And we've seen it at this scale, the scale that makes the headlines, but it's happening all over the place. You know, possibly you may have heard of Mobros, but I suspect many people haven't, but they're not a big company. They specialize in grooming products for moustaches. It is pretty niche, but even organizations this size are using their facilities, their time, their resources to help in some way. And it's something that we're seeing across the board. These commonplace scenarios, I think, is symbolic of a wider shift in business, a shift to becoming more human. We're seeing brands acknowledged and we're seeing them applauded, not based on the products or services they provide, but actually how they behave and what's behind that behavior. A powerful spotlight has been shone on what it is to be human and the value of being more human, not just in our personal lives, but in our corporate life too. It's almost been like, I guess, sitting here over the past 2 months, watching a giant science experiment. And we're being reminded that the way that we connect with each other is based on emotion and not rational decision making. And we make purchase decisions in the same way too. And that's something many businesses, particularly B2B, they tend to forget, or at least choose to ignore, and they do so at their peril. We're being reminded all the time that it's emotion that trumps logic. And we're recognizing that actually, if we really want to engage others, we need to be talking to the heart, because in most cases, the head simply isn't listening. The world is waking up to this. And if businesses are to survive now and thrive going forward, they need to wake up to it too. This awakening that we're witnessing has also accelerated our own thinking at Markmaking with respect to a perspective on business success that we've been exploring and developing for some time now. And that's the subject of this webinar. It's something we call brand magnetism. So what is brand magnetism? What's it all about and why should we care? Brand magnetism recognizes that some organizations possess an uncommon level of attraction, loyalty, trust, and resilience. And as a result of those elements, consistently outperform their competitors. It's inspired by the idea that highly successful businesses And highly successful brands share common traits that are also seen in people that might typically be described as being magnetic or having magnetic personalities. And it stems from a particular mix of human qualities and behaviours. Human qualities and behaviours that can also consistently be seen in the highest performing businesses. They're not new traits, but we've witnessed them come to the fore dramatically in recent months in the light of the pandemic. Significantly, these traits are distinct from what the business actually does, i.e. its product, its business offering, just in the way that they have very little to do with what a person does for a living, what their occupation is. And they're traits that are becoming increasingly critical for businesses looking to thrive over the long term. The good news is that all these traits can be practiced, developed, and improved. So just as a person can work on what makes them attractive, brands can do the same. And fundamentally, that means that any brand has the potential to become magnetic. And that's the really exciting part. Brands can choose to do things that will increase their magnetism. So becoming a magnetic brand is actually within the reach of any business, with one caveat that actually we'll come on to later. And this is the fundamental premise of brand magnetism. And it's thinking in this way that has helped many of our clients become more successful and will continue to drive that success. Now let's look at the specific traits, or as we've called them, the cornerstones of brand magnetism. We've spent some time looking at our most successful clients over the past 25 years and others in the public eye. And by doing so, we were able to identify common traits that we believed contributed to their magnetism. We started with probably about 9 or 10 traits, but we wanted to develop a more practical tool. And in order to do that, we knew that we needed to distill those traits into fewer number. And we got to 4. And we were able to do that by eliminating traits that weren't ever present in those businesses and also common to all the businesses that we looked at. We also found that of the original 10 or so traits, pretty much all of them could be incorporated into the final form in some way or another. So I'll introduce them in turn with a little bit of an overview for each. Magnetic brands, without exception, are purposeful. They stand for something. They're crystal clear in what they believe, what they value, and what they're ultimately trying to achieve. It's a raison d'etre that transcends the profit making. It's not as much about the bottom line. And they tend to possess an air of confidence that's born of this sense of purpose. And that confidence in itself can instill confidence in others as well. And a lot like the physical properties of magnets, there is polarization can occur. It comes with the territory as well. It's inevitable that if you have strong beliefs, not everyone will agree with them. But those who do agree with them have the potential to be fiercely loyal and will always wave your flag for you. There are tons of examples that we could have used here, but we chose these couple. Nike, right from the word go, in the original running sportswear wars, Nike and Adidas. Nike were the ones who tapped into emotion right from the word go. They were the ones who chose to invest in people and individuals and present those as part of their brand, as opposed to dialing up and focusing in on the product features, the leather used in a trainer, the rubber used for a sole. And they've continued that throughout their journey. So now they have a mission. They talk about bringing inspiration and innovation to every athlete in the world. And they make a real point that if you have a body, you are an athlete. They're clear on what they're trying to do. But in line with the note about polarization, they're also never afraid to put themselves out there. So way before all the Black Lives Matter movement activity that we're seeing at the moment, they used Colin Kaepernick. He obviously came to the fore after taking to one knee during an NFL game in protest against racial injustice. And they were quick to back him. He was one of their endorsing athletes. They'd not used him before, but he quickly became the face of Nike. They're not afraid to take a stand on serious issues. They're not afraid to have a point of view, even if that risks alienating people. In fact, they're looking to do that because they want people to believe in their cause. Here's a brand you probably won't have heard of. Clearview, when they came to us initially, they had a challenge of how they remain relevant after 40 years in the road safety and count and classification industry. Essentially, they produced solar panelled cat's eyes, or a derivation of, they produced count and classification material that enabled local authorities to record the weight and the volume of traffic on the roads. But they'd lost their way. And part of the problem we identified was that they'd lost their clarity of purpose. They had a company vision, but if you read it, it was really full of jargon. To become the partner of choice in the implementation of integrated, sustainable, intelligent road safety and traffic monitoring solutions, leveraging our core competencies in delivering solar-powered, minimally invasive, real-time solutions. They were all about the product. By the time we finished working with them and the exercise was over, they had a much clearer sense of purpose. When you boiled it all down, they were simply making journeys work. They were using the intelligence that they were able to gain through their sophisticated technology and products, using that intelligence to inform decisions, to influence behaviours, and effectively make journeys safer for people. And it had a transformative effect, not just on their customers, understanding what it is that they were all about, but also from a recruitment perspective. They were struggling. They were trying to find high caliber people, high caliber coders, technical engineers, but without a clear sense of purpose. They were just another business. Suddenly they had something that somebody could refer to, talk about with their friends in the pub, and they noticed more people applying for applications and a higher caliber of individual too. The second cornerstone of brand magnetism: magnetic brands are imaginative. They zig when others zag. They question the world. They're the brands that ask why and what if. And as a result of doing that, they draw other people in. They create magnetism as a result. They think differently and they do differently. There's a lot of curiosity. We had curiosity originally as another cornerstone, but it lives here. Magnetic brands are curious by nature. They're often seeking to disrupt and challenge, in search of ways to make lives better, to make the world a better place, to make good things happen. And they're disciplined in their use of imagination. They use it in a way to solve problems, business challenges. They use it in a way to present themselves to the world and express what they stand for in a way that people will remember and relate to. They use their imagination and the application of that imagination to be remarkable, to make themselves difficult to ignore, to create cut through. And they often use humour, wit, to powerful effect. They'll be quick to create a smile in the mind if there's an opportunity to do so. They recognise and they understand the close links which exist between humour, creativity and engagement, and the need to stimulate an emotional response. A couple of examples to illustrate that. Airbnb is a classic. That's imagination at the scale of reimagining, re-envisaging a whole industry. And actually they've been on a journey. You know, they started with find a place to stay, and they've got to belong anywhere because they recognize that their purpose is much bigger than just finding a place to stay. A nice example I wanted to share, if you've not seen it before, is B2B. It's advertising in B2B, but I mentioned imagination and how using that and using creativity to present your offering, your proposition in a different and remarkable way is where imagination is used very effectively by the most magnetic brands. I'm hoping this will play without issue. It's the only video I'm playing because I'm slightly nervous that it might not work. Just using Zoom is a tech leap enough for me. But if you've got your speakers on, have a watch and a listen to this. It's only about 60 seconds.
I've had my ups and downs, my fair share of bumpy roads and heavy winds. That's what made me what I am today. Now I stand here before you. What you see is a body crafted to perfection. A pair of legs engineered to defy the laws of physics, and a mindset to master the most epic of splits.
Who can say where the road goes?
It's a beautiful ad. Jean-Claude Van Damme, he's front of camera. You can't really see what he's doing, except that he's perhaps moving slowly backwards. He's talking about his life, his career in quite emotive terms. The soundtrack is Enya. That in itself is very emotive and certainly required a degree of imagination and creativity to include that. But essentially, as the camera pulls away and the two trucks reverse slowly along this airstrip, they become increasingly far apart, leaving the action hero doing an epic split, as is the title of the advert. It's beautifully shot, it's beautifully crafted, and it's a terrific idea, and it's a brilliant idea that demonstrates imagination. How you go from, we have these big long haul trucks, big sturdy machines, but their steering is hyper sensitive, it's super sophisticated. How do we illustrate that? I know, Jean-Claude Van Damme, Enya, and a runway. It's great, and it works to terrific effect. The third cornerstone of brand magnetism, generous. Magnetic brands are generous. They're generous in the way that people are generous, and I don't mean just about financially handing out money. They're generous with their time and their energy, even if they don't have a lot of time. And actually, like everybody else, their energy is finite. Like magnetic people, they give a lot of themselves. They make others feel listened to, important, valued, and good about themselves. And with magnetic brands, it's the same. It's a two-way street. They seek to give more than they take. And the net balance of their contribution to society is positive. Lives are improved. The world is a better place for their existence. Brands that think and behave in that way draw people in the direction, be it customers, employees, partners, all stakeholders. We've seen loads of this recently, like the examples I shared in the first section. But here's another anyway, which I suspect most of you will have come across, even if you're not a beer drinker. But Brewdog, in characteristically Brewdog style, took it upon themselves to re-pivot their alcohol production, put that into alcohol-based hand sanitizers, and deliver them by the tens, hundreds of thousands to the NHS. You know, they knew they could help. They had the capacity to help. They had the desire to help. They had the generosity to help, and they have done. One of many, many examples. The fourth cornerstone, the final cornerstone, magnetic brands are authentic. We're drawn to genuine people. It's a trust thing. And we spot very quickly when people aren't genuine, and our reaction is often in the opposite direction. We're repelled, again, a lot like magnets. It's the same for magnetic brands. They walk the talk. Hollow words have absolutely no place for them. There is substance to their story. They make sure that they evidence what they have to say with actions and behaviours that build trust as a result. That doesn't mean they get everything right. Like genuine people, they're often quick to put their hands in the air when they make mistakes. And by doing so, they earn respect and they create deeper bonds. They're also careful. They're very careful not to take themselves too seriously in the game of business. You know, there's a lot to be said for imperfection. We're drawn to imperfection. It's a human characteristic as well. Sometimes, particularly in B2B, there's a sense that professional, inverted commas, equals corporate. It doesn't. And there is scope always to be more human. Couple of specific examples of authenticity. Patagonia, amazing brand. I think here's a brand that would tick all of these, or would score highly across all four of these dimensions without a shadow of doubt. They could have appeared in any category. I've used them here because when they began, and another thing I would recommend is Yvon Chouinard, the founder of Patagonia. His book, Let My People Go Surfing, is an amazing read. But he was a reluctant businessman. He was really a climber and a surfer, but he started making products in order to fund his hobbies. But he realized that his hobbies were having a detrimental impact on the environment, and that was wrong. So they've made it their mission to produce sustainable products that minimize harm, but also do as much as they can to ensure that they're contributing to a healthier planet beyond just the products they're making. So when, I think it was 2017, Trump announced that US corporation tax was going to be reduced from, I think, about 35% to 27%, and most businesses jumped at that. Patagonia looked at the difference they were saving, some $10 million, and made that donation to environmental charities and groups. They live and they breathe and they act in the direction of their purpose all the time. I mentioned putting your hand up, making mistakes, being more human. I think this is a lovely example. You'll have seen this too. You can't really get a situation much more drastic for a fast food chicken restaurant than to run out of chicken, but they responded quickly, they responded in a human way, they responded in a humorous way too. And as a result, people responded well too. They get it. People must make mistakes. People get things wrong, even if they're big mistakes. If they're quick to acknowledge it, you're viewed very, very differently. Just a note of caution on the authenticity piece. We've seen a lot of brands recently hammered for a lack of authenticity. I think we've seen this phenomenon of virtue signaling. So with all the various things going on at the moment, the BLM movement, previously the Me Too movement, we see brands superficially jumping on the back of causes and movements, really for the sake of being seen to, as opposed to doing something supportive in any really meaningful way. Gillette took a lot of flack for their referencing of the Me Too movement with their Best a Man Can Be campaign, and still come under fire for charging more for women's razors than men's. So brands have to be careful. Even Nike, who fortunately, they have a history, they have a track record of consistently standing up for people's rights, at times have to tread carefully. They're fully backing the BLM movement, but at the same time, they're being questioned over a lack of ethnic diversity, even at their own corporate board level. So authenticity is vital. It's also a very fine line to be trod. So there we have the 4 cornerstones, and it's these that together create brand magnetism. And as we were saying, in the premise of brand magnetism, the exciting part is that they can all be developed and improved. And we can do that, and we can build them into everything we do. They should be rooted in the culture of your business, built into all aspects of your brand strategy, your communications, your experiences, your behaviours. So for the final part, we'll take a look now, a high-level look at how to build magnetism and touch on some of the specific challenges for B2B. Becoming a magnetic brand is definitely a journey. The good news is that wherever you are now, and I'm looking at the list of attendees today, I can see marketing team members, I can see business owners. Some of those businesses are quite small. We've got startups, we've got scale-ups, we've got established players. But actually, wherever you are now on that journey, there is the opportunity to up your game in the brand magnetism stakes. So what I'm about to share with you are universal principles. The practical part, the practical application depends very much on where your particular organization is now, the scale of your organization, and of course, as I say, your role within it. But before we get into those, I did mention earlier that any brand has the potential to become more magnetic, with one exception, with one caveat. That caveat is that your product has to be first rate. Whatever it is, intermediary support, reconciliation software, digital file preservation, commercial mortgages, specialist insurance, electronic payments. I know there are a few of you from that space here today. Thank you, Tony, for the shout out. Your product has to be among the best for the particular markets you serve. There are situations where a great product is enough. We see it a lot in the tech and innovation space, but only ever for a limited period of time. It varies, but it isn't long before new entrants, established players will begin to take market share. And by that time, it's too late. There was also a time when you could get away with a less than great product, at least for a while. Those days are gone. It's so easy to compare. Social proof, comparison sites, reviews, they're there, they're everywhere, they're for everything. So assuming you have this start point, the great product, that box is ticked, here's how to, a top level view of how to create brand magnetism. The first step, define your story. This is actually the foundation for everything. To be clear on what we mean by story, it's not simply about a paragraph on your About Us page, but to be fair, that isn't a bad place to start. Think of your story as a living, breathing, evolving, open-ended, infinite thing, but underpinned by some concrete fundamentals. Your story is home to your raison d'etre, your reason for existing. It's home to the audiences you serve and why you serve them. It's home to your values, your principles, your perspective on the world. It's home to what you stand for. It's what you stand against. It's the way you behave and the actions that you take. So take a step back, revisit the foundations of your story. And for most people, this is probably as good an opportunity in the current times as you'll ever have. We, for one, often, it's the thing that gets put on the back burner the whole time. We see it consistently. We see it time and time because it requires effort, it requires time, it requires attention. So do it now and view your story, view it through the lens of brand magnetism. Ask yourself, is it purposeful? Is there meaning to what we're doing beyond making a profit? Is it imaginative? Does it reflect our way of seeing the world and paint a picture of the world that we're seeking to create? Is our story one of giving and serving, not simply taking? Is the net benefit a positive benefit to society? And is it authentic? You know, it's not a case we've rebranded, we've got this great story, but crikey, how on earth are we going to live up to it? Don't set promises you can't keep. Make sure it is authentic and it is sustainable. A common challenge to crafting a story in B2B is the objection that what we do isn't particularly exciting. But if you look hard enough, there's always something that will touch people on a human and emotive level. And there's a way, and it will always be layered with the way in which you're doing things, the way in which you're viewing the world. There's also a misconception that when we talk about words like purpose, particularly, it has to be super worthy in some way. It doesn't. It only needs to be able to demonstrate that you are in somehow contributing to a better world at some level. I love the story about the janitor at NASA HQ. I think it was 1961. JFK was being shown around the headquarters. He was asked what his job was, and he replied to the president that I'm helping put a man on the moon. You know, there's a place. What does your business? What role does your business play directly or indirectly in making people's lives better, even in the smallest way? Build your story around that and resist the urge to be sucked into the technical detail of what you do. Here's quite a good example of that. Another of our clients, Preservica, amazing client. They've developed file preservation software. It's very, very clever. Effectively, what it does is it ensures that the documents that you are working on now will still be accessible in 10 years' time, even if the formats have changed, and the integrity of those documents will remain entirely intact. Like a lot of tech companies we work with, they were obsessive about their technology. And if you looked at any of their collateral, to their credit, they had a documented brand proposition, but a lot like the Clearview Intelligence example from earlier, they described their proposition, and I'll just read a tiny extract. Award-winning digital preservation and access software, complete to standards-based OAIS ISO 14721 trusted repository that includes connectors to leading enterprise content and records management systems to ensure long-term usability, trustworthiness, preservation of vital digital records, emails, and content. By the time we'd finished the process, and part of their objectives was to break into corporate territory. Previously, they were well established in memory institutions, museums, archives, libraries, etc. By the time we'd finished, they were talking about themselves in a completely different way. The world's cultural, economic, and social and political memory is at risk. Our mission is to protect it. And it just breathed a whole new lease of life into aspects of the business. And very much like the Clearview example, new recruits, there was an increase in applicants. There was a increase in the quality of those applicants. People within the business could suddenly talk about what they did in an impassioned and exciting way. It's a powerful, powerful thing. So that's about defining your story. The second step is to embed your story. This starts with your people. I think, again, something we've witnessed on numerous occasions is an assumption from the most senior people in the business that everybody else around them gets it. But actually, it's your role, if you're in that position, to create a culture that embraces, nurtures, and truly perpetuates what you stand for. And again, use the lens of brand magnetism to look at it. Find imaginative ways to engage your people and help them understand what it is that you're about. Be generous, involve them, and that's about involving them. Be generous with your time. Be generous in terms of the amount of involvement you want them to play in this. Use them to find ideas, to feed into the imagination piece. And be authentic. You know, there are no rules, there are no set guidelines. Do it your way. Build your story into how you develop people and your recruitment strategy and activity. Because basically brand magnetism is an inside-out exercise. These guys, Brook Street de Roche, are a commercial law firm. The work we did with them was a brand identity and a brand positioning exercise. They recognized that a lot of the way they operated was far more personal, far more human, far more individualized and personalized than their competitors. And yet their identity did nothing to support them. We created a mark and a visual system that allowed them to be playful. They're called Brook Street de Roche. It's 4 words. It's a quatrain. What we were able to do was give them a device where actually they could in effect go beyond the logo. So their mark, they could change the words in any way they wanted to communicate something different. So they could have they could be very explicit. They could say lawyers with unique properties. We thrive, you thrive. But they could be also much more human with it, which was their intention. And what we were able to do was give the business the tools to embed it themselves. So of course, people cottoned onto this, in fact, more so than we'd originally expected, and started creating their own quatrains for different pieces of collateral, for different experiences, for different environments. And I think we knew we'd really hit the nail on the head when the managing partner sent through an email after a workshop we'd facilitated around embedding the new brand, the new story, and the new identity. And he sent us an email formatted in the style of the new quatrains, and in fact continued to do so for about 3 months after. So it was about embedding. People got it, and it's a very important part of the path to magnetism. The third step, tell your story. So many brands we work with actually have a great story. It might need a bit of work around defining it, crafting it, shaping it, but the story is fantastic. But remember the slide with the increasing noise and the diminishing attention spans. You need to find ways to tell your story so well that others want to tell it for you as well. And this is where you can dial up that imagination cornerstone. There's so much more to this, actually, more than enough for a series of webinars. But to get you thinking, have a look. Is your visual identity working as hard enough as it can? Does it really reflect what you're all about? And when you put out a piece of communication, when you create an experience, do you treat it always as an opportunity to reinforce your story? Do you go above and beyond the immediate short-term objectives of that piece to make sure the story is also the thread that links everything together? This is very much about, if you've seen Binet and Field's research work, the whole idea of the long and the short of it, B2B struggle with this in particular. It's about getting the balance between your short-term tactical marketing activity and the long-term activity, which actually leads to greater brand preferences. Not many businesses get this right, to be fair, and even fewer in B2B. Are you using creativity to amplify your story? A great technique is to think in terms of moments. Think in terms of creating experiences that will really endure. This thing I'll show you next is one of my favorite examples. Apologies if any of you have seen this before, but I just think it absolutely captures this point. This hotel looks not nice enough. It's in Florida. It's one of about 10,000 hotels, I think, in Florida, possibly even more. What's special about it? Well, certainly pre-COVID, when we could all go to hotels, if you looked on TripAdvisor, the Magic Hotel in Florida, this hotel consistently ranked about number 3 in TripAdvisor. I don't believe it was because of the views, looking into other people's apartments. I'm not sure it was the size of the pool. I'm not sure it was the decor. So what was it that created this appeal? It was simple. They'd created a moment. They'd used their imagination and they created a moment. Beside the pool is a red telephone. Above the red telephone, it says Popsicle Hotline. When you're in need of a drink, you're hot, need an ice lolly, you call that number. Within a few minutes, somebody comes down with a silver platter with your ice lolly on the platter. The thing that everybody remembered and everybody cited in their reviews of that hotel was the Popsicle Hotline, a simple idea that created an enduring moment. Are you leveraging codification? What the hell is codification? I hear you cry, or perhaps I would if you weren't all on mute. Codification, to build awareness and ultimately salience, your marketing activity can't just grab attention. Your audience has to know that it's you, and that's often where we go wrong. We create something that creates cut through, has standout, people remember it, but they can't remember the brand behind it. One brand that we've worked with for over 15 years now, who I think really get that, and we've worked hard with them on that, the idea of codes, is the Mortgage Works. The Mortgage Works is the intermediary lending arm, one of them, of Nationwide Building Society. They specialise in buy-to-let mortgages, and they're part of a marketing research project, ongoing project, which measures unprompted willingness to recommend, it measures brand recall, and the Mortgage Works is consistently, and has been, at 1 or 2 with clear water from the rest of the pack over the last 10, 15 years. It's down to a number of things. They exhibit a lot of the traits of magnetic brands. They consistently have a good product, but they have a story, and that story is built on support, and it's built on dependability, and it's built on consistency of support. So during the last recession, they were still there. Lots of players dropped out of the market. The Mortgage Works were still there. They're still there now. When their new legislations come in, complex legislations come in, they're quick to produce guides and information packs for brokers to be able to talk to their landlords, and packs for landlords too. But the codification is about their colour, it's about the use of their imagery, it's about their language, and in their particular space, that has tremendous standout and tremendous memorability and recognition. The final step of the path to magnetism: live your story. This is the last step, and it's crunch time. This is the authenticity piece in big bold letters. You've made promises, you've put your stall out, you have to be tough on yourselves. Are you substantiating and evidencing what you're promising, your core story, with the right behaviours and actions? This happens at a personal level, it's at a product level, it's at a mission level, just as we saw with Patagonia's rejection of Trump's tax reduction policy. But it can be in the detail too. And I thought this was a really lovely example. Nationwide are a client of ours. They have been for pushing 20 years now. I think it's got to be close. So this I received, but perhaps more notably, I had a call before Easter. It was all kicking off. Every business had been sent into a spin with lockdown and the prospects of the impact of COVID. Most businesses are thinking, crikey, what about our customers? Crikey, what about our people? Magnetic brands like Nationwide, who have a purpose of building society, they look at what they do in a holistic manner. They got on the phone, or rather one of the secretaries did, got in touch with me, asked me who specifically at Mark Making had been working on the COVID communications that we've been able to turn around for them quite quickly. Could they have their names and addresses? Each one of those individuals, 8 or so individuals, received this little package. It was full of hotel chocolat, chocolates, treats just before Easter. It was such a fantastic demonstration of authenticity. And at the same time, they announced to all suppliers that they were reducing payment terms from 45 days to 10 days during this period. It's essential to think beyond your customers and to all stakeholders, but specifically employees. If you think about your employees and you look at the trends that have been emerging now for some years, but have been accelerated certainly in the last few months, people are looking to work at a place that has a purposeful story, one place that's generous, a place that uses its imagination, and a place that is authentic. They want to be part of something good. This quote is, again, just one of many, symptomatic of the trends we're seeing. Whole generations, and I think it's seeping through every generation now. If you're going to work somewhere, yes, I want a fair salary, and I want benefits, etc. But I want to be part of something. I want to feel that I'm contributing and I'm achieving. So these effectively are the principles of creating brand magnetism, the path, the key steps on the path to magnetism, and actions will depend on each business, and as I've said, within your role within it. But it can be helpful to look at this, and it needn't be overwhelming, and ask yourself, where on this particular journey are we falling down? Have we got our story right? Oh, yeah, we've got a great story. We're just telling it poorly. Does everybody in the business understand our story? No, not really. And are we living it? Are we doing things that express that story well at every opportunity? Are we taking those bigger actions that support our story? What needs attention right now? Where's the low-hanging fruit? Where are the quick fixes? Where is the potential to look across this and go, yeah, we can dial up purpose, we can dial up imagination, we can dial up generosity, we can be more authentic, and look at it in that way. It is a big subject. Our intention is to run a series of separate webinars looking at each of these steps in more detail. But the purpose of today, and I'm conscious of time, was to give you all that overview. So where does all this leave us? Just to wrap up, the pursuit of brand magnetism ultimately leads to greater appeal, loyalty, trust, and resilience. It's fundamentally about going beyond your product, your core business offering, and being more human. And because of that, anybody can do it, but it's a holistic approach, and it takes time. But because anyone can do, any business can do that, it's actually within the reach of any business, with the proviso that you have a strong product proposition. And the opportunity for B2B is enormous. And that's largely because the bar is low. We're still playing catch up with the B2B, the B2C world. And this is what we're so passionate about. We can see these B2B organizations that could be doing so more. They have great ideas, they have great products. If they could dial up their magnetism factor, it could have a huge impact. And it's about taking those small steps, little steps, marginal gains that have that potential for profound impact. So the question, I guess, is what are you waiting for?